I am so grateful that in the last few years, I've gotten back into reading. And not just reading books that I feel like I should be reading, but books that actually bring me joy that I genuinely look forward to picking up. If you are trying to fall back in love with reading or build a TBR for 2026 that actually excites you, then today's episode is perfect for you. I am breaking down all of the books that I am most excited to read in 2026, from buzzy new releases from established authors to debuts from new voices to the titles that maybe didn't get their moment in 2025, but I am not leaving behind that will remain on my TBR or to be read list for this year. Plus, we're going to talk about the new genres that I have not read yet that I'm considering dipping my toes into this year. So, whether you're here for fresh recommendations or you just want to hear a gal chat about books, I'm so happy that you're here. Before we get into our book chats, let's do a little create and consume as we do at the top of every episode. So, as far as what I've been creating this week, I have actually gotten back into short form content already, and I'm really proud of myself for not leaving this till later in the year, for kind of making a plan and sticking with it at least for January. We'll see how well that resolution sticks with me going into the rest of the first quarter this year. And I even created a whole new short form video hub within my Notion that I use to plan all of my goals and to dos for the year. I like it because I'm able to see what I want to create for the month, both in a calendar view and also in a list view. So I can make sure I'm rotating through my content pillars, rotating through content types, shorter trending reels versus chatty reels versus carousels. And I'm feeling like really inspired and motivated on that front, which I've felt so disorganized and like I've just been throwing things at the wall with no strategy on short form for the last year or two because I've been deeply focused, as you guys know, if you followed me before, on launching this podcast and my YouTube channel. So it feels really nice to have a plan, and I'm trying to keep it simple and not overwhelm myself. I've planned 12 videos for the month of January, which is going to work out to me posting, I think, every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday. And if I end up having some other things that inspire me on the fly, I could always throw that stuff up as well. But I really feel strongly that this cadence of posting and this way of tracking things is going to end up keeping me on track. So if that holds well, I'm going to like test the system for the first month and see how it goes. I might also consider adding this calendar page to my Notion hub, which, as you guys know, is like where I plan my entire life for the year and my whole business as a content creator. So I'll be sure to keep you posted on that. And actually, if there is anyone out there who wants to beta test that feature, if you want like a little sneak peek in exchange for me, getting some feedback from you with what you think about it, feel free to DM me. You can DM me just on my regular Instagram at Austen Tosone, or reach out on at Create and Consume, which is the podcast account. Okay, and then speaking of consuming, I consumed something last week, you guys, and it was the Stranger Things series finale. My God, this show has been on the air for so long. I'll tell you how long this show's been on the air. When I was an editor at Nylon, the first full issue that I worked on, like from start to finish, was the September issue for 2017. Winona Ryder was our cover star for that issue to promote the launch of Stranger Things. That's how long this show's been on the air. Literally 10 years. And there were high expectations, I would say, for this series finale, because there's just so much that you have to wrap up. And even though the episode was 2 hours long, I still felt like there were a lot of threads that were going to need to come together to answer all of the questions that this audience had, this like cult following that the show developed over the years. I will say, as far as like the season overall, I don't think 5 was my favorite season. I know a lot of people say 3 was their favorite, and I mean, that's just such a fun like 80s summer, vibes are high, the girls at the mall. If I could pick one season of the Stranger Things universe to live in, it probably would be season 3. But even though the season overall was not my favorite, I did think that the final episode was very well done. I'm definitely jealous of anyone who chose to go see this in theaters, because I want to say the first like 3 quarters of this was basically like a full-on action movie. I did feel like the epilogue was a little longer than it should have been. And, we finished the big action sequence and I was like, why are there still 35 minutes left in this episode? It just seemed like too long. I still have a couple of like small lingering questions, like a couple details that I feel like we didn't end up circling back on. But all in all, I loved the way it wrapped. I absolutely cried while watching it. And to spoil the very end real quick, if you want to skip ahead 30 seconds, do it now. As far as the question of what happened to 11, I'm sorry, guys. I think 11 is gone. I mean, Kali seemed really not well to me. I don't think she survived. I don't think they tricked Hopper. I think she's gone, and that was honestly the perfect arc of her character. And I'm sorry she didn't get to experience more fun human things, but she will forever be an icon and a badass in my eyes. Don't forget to let me know what you guys are creating and consuming as well. It could be anything from, oh my God, I made this amazing recipe last week, to I listened to this album that blew my mind. As you know, I share a variety of things on here too. And I would have shared the book that I'm currently reading too, but because we're about to talk about so many books, I figured I'd save that one for next week. So, with that said, let's get into our bookish discussion. I love doing book episodes, you guys. I definitely would love to do more in the future. Lately, I've been doing kind of like a top of the year, what I want to read this year episode, and then like a mid year reading check in. I feel like that's a nice time to give you guys some updates, let you know some early favorites from the year. What I'm liking, what I'm not liking, what I am reading more of when it comes to, genre or length or author or whatever the case is. And I just have a lot of fun doing them. So today's episode is going to be what is on my TBR for 2026. We're going to talk about some of the most anticipated new releases that are coming out this year that I cannot wait to read. And as far as like a 2025 wrap up, I'm actually going to do that one as a YouTube video. So if you want to see what my 5-star reads were from 2025, that will be up on my YouTube channel. If it's not up by the time this episode comes out, it should be up in the next day or two. So feel free to head over to my YouTube channel and turn on notifications for videos to make sure that you don't miss that upload if you want to hear what my favorites were in 2025. Okay, so I have this broken down into 3 sections. First, I'm going to talk you through the new releases coming out this year that I'm most excited about, because I feel like that's the most exciting thing. So I want to start with that. Then I'm going to talk about some things that I've recently added to my TBR in the last month or two that have kind of just been on my radar and have officially made their way onto my list, convinced me that I really do want to make sure I make time for them this year. And then I'm going to share the books that are still left over from my TBR from 2025, books that I didn't get to last year that I still really have top of mind that I want to make sure I get to this year. The first new release that I'm really excited about is called Anatomy of an Alibi by Ashley Elston, and this one comes out January 13th. I was introduced to Ashley Elston actually through my book club. So 2 years ago, sorry. I'm so confused about what time it is. In 2024, our book club read First Lie Wins as our book club pick, and I was so gripped through that whole thing. And I really think 2024 was the year that I rediscovered the mystery and thriller genre of books, which I'm so happy I did. I loved how while I was reading First Lie Wins, I just never knew what was around the corner. And even though I was on the edge of my seat, I was not fearful, because I feel like for some thriller books, it can get into very scary territory very quickly. And this one was a lot more mild on that front. I didn't fear for my life or have nightmares. And then when at the end you could kind of look back and see how all of the plot points connected, I just thought it was a really smart and well done story that unfolded. So her new book, Anatomy of an Alibi, is a tense thriller in which 2 women hatch a dangerous plan to swap identities and uncover dark secrets, only to find themselves entwined in murder and deception with only one alibi between them. So I'm super excited for this one. I loved the female main character from First Lie Wins. There were so many layers to her, and I really thought the narration and kind of uncovering what was going on in her head was just so well done. So the fact that there's kind of 2 women involved in this one and that they're going to swap identities, I love it. It's giving spooky older Parent Trap vibes. Another new release that also comes out on January 13th is Woman Down by Colleen Hoover. And the one-sentence pitch for this book is: a frustrated best-selling author retreats to a secluded cabin to overcome writer's block and ends up entangled in a chilling, reality-blurring thriller when a detective arrives with unsettling news. I'm kind of just there for that setup. Like, and I think this is such a great winter read. I mean, spooky cabin, I'm picturing like upstate New York, kind of off the beaten path. I also love books about writing and writers, which I know is very meta, but especially one trying to overcome writer's block who then ends up like basically in the plot of a different mystery. I mean, I think that is very catchy as a hook. And can I ask you guys an insane question though? So, would it be crazy if this was my first coho book? So I have not read any other Colleen Hoover books yet, which may be crazy. Somehow I like joined in back on my reading game a little after her book talk craze, I want to say. So I saw It Ends With Us in theaters because, Blake Lively and movies. But I did not read that book. I have not read any of her books. So would it be insane if this is my first one? I feel like this is not really her normal story. I feel like she does a lot more like relationship stories versus woman goes to the woods by herself. So I don't know if this is so out of genre for her and what she usually writes that if I want to like have the true Colleen Hoover experience, I should start with It Ends With Us or It Starts With Us or one of her other books. I mean, Verity is probably her most popular one. So I don't know. Feel free to reach out and let me know if there's somewhere else I should start in the Colleen Hoover universe. Next on my list is Little One by Olivia Mentor, which comes out on February 6th. And Olivia and I know each other from the magazine editorial world. So she was working at Bustle in New York when I was working at Nylon, and we had just met and connected then. She now lives in upstate New York in an absolutely beautiful, stunning home that she and her husband are kind of renovating together. She's also the co-host of the Bad on Paper podcast, and I just love like listening to her on the podcast. I'm also subscribed to her Substack. Like I'm an Olivia fan through and through. Okay. I'm here for basically anything she does. So I read her first novel, Such a Bad Influence. I believe that came out in 2024. And that was about a child social media star who went missing during a live stream and her sister's journey to kind of figure out what happened to her. I thought that was so well done, so well written. I loved the like inner dialogue of the main character. Like I loved reading from her perspective. It reminded me a lot of Olivia's other writing too. And the end was one of those endings that like truly left me kind of speechless and kept me thinking. So it was definitely a 5-star read for me from 2024. So her new book, Little One, is a gripping emotional story about a woman whose past secrets resurface when a journalist begins probing the eerie circumstances of her escape from a cult-like environment. I haven't really read a cult novel, maybe ever. I don't know if that's crazy or not. I read a novel a few years ago called Self-Care, which was about women working at this kind of toxic goop-like environment. Let's just call it that, like Goop as in Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. I'm currently reading How to Sell a Romance by Alexa Martin. That was left over on my TBR from 2025, so we're scooting it in right at the beginning of 2026 because I asked for it for Christmas and Andrew got it for me. But I'm just so excited for this one. I've seen some people who received early copies of this book already raving about it, so I can't wait to pick it up in February. Okay, next up is Missing Me by Ayana Lage, and this book comes out March 17th. Ayana is maybe one of my like favorite parasocial relationships that I have. So I've never met her in person, but we've been online mutuals for a couple of years now. She actually had me on her podcast a few years ago. If I can find a link to that episode, I will put it in the show notes because she is a really fun interviewer and just like an incredible storyteller. I, again, like follow her Substack, follow her on, Instagram. So I also love her short form content. And she had a really, I guess, harrowing is the word, experience a couple of years ago after the birth of her daughter. And so this is a memoir, but just the very quick summary that I pulled here reads: after giving birth, a writer's long held faith spirals into postpartum psychosis marked by vivid religious delusions, leading to hospitalization and a profound reckoning with motherhood, belief, and reality. So, obviously, a very serious topic and a very personal look into something that must have just been so disorienting and so confusing, especially right after you have just given birth and you just want to bask in like the newborn glow, but there's something deeply like unsettling within you. I mean, I can't even imagine, but I am so like invested in learning more about what happened. Ayana has already shared a lot about this journey on social media, but I know that, you can only share so much like in an Instagram carousel or in a reel. So I'm really, really looking forward to sitting down and getting the full story from start to finish. I am really proud of her. Is that weird to say about someone that you have never actually met in real life? But I'm just grateful that she chose to open up and share this story, because I am sure that there are other women out there who are mothers or want to be mothers who maybe have dealt with this or had a friend who's dealt with this or are worried that this could happen to them, to just better understand what postpartum psychosis is and how to recognize it and what to do. And obviously, this is just one woman's story, but I think that one story can really go a long way and be super powerful and impactful. So I am really curious to just kind of get sucked into this, and any story that Ayana tells, like, I will be there to listen to it. Okay, completely changing gears, headed into the romance genre. The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez comes out on March 24th. And kind of similar to Colleen Hoover, if any of you out there are big Abby Jimenez fans, I know that she's like one of the biggest names in contemporary romance. I cannot believe I still haven't read anything of hers yet. And I think the reason is just I'm confused about her interconnected romance and stories and where to start. So, for example, The Night We Met, from my understanding, is the second book in a series that kind of follows the book she came out with last summer, which I want to say was called Say You'll Remember Me. I have heard really great things about her book Just for the Summer, but that is the third book in this kind of other world of romances. So I think I need to actually start with yours truly if that's the case. So if you've read, can you please DM me and just advise me, like, how interconnected are these? Am I going to be so obsessed with one that I'm going to go back and read the others and be upset that some parts of that was spoiled? Or like, what's the deal with that? Inquiring minds want to know. Inquiring minds being me. But anyway, the plot for The Night We Met, which is her 2026 release, is a single split-second choice leaves Larissa caught between the man who loves her and the man she's with, as a deep, slow-burn friendship threatens to become an impossible, life-altering romance. Friends to lovers, for me, is not something that actually works in real life, at least just speaking from personal experience, but I do like reading a friends to lovers story. Okay, another one is American Fantasy by Emma Straub. This is coming out April 7th. If you do end up watching my 5-star reads from 2025 video on YouTube, spoiler alert, This Time Tomorrow was on there. And oh my God, I just love Emma Straub's writing. Like, there were so many parts of This Time Tomorrow that I would read a paragraph and then I would like sit and look up at the ceiling and then I would reread the paragraph again and just be like, that was so well said. And that's just such a satisfying experience to have as a reader. So, anyway, her new novel, American Fantasy, the plot for that is a newly divorced, empty nest 50-year-old unexpectedly rediscovers desire, identity, and possibility aboard a nostalgia fueled boy band cruise where fandom, aging, and connection collide in surprising and meaningful ways. As you guys know, I went on my first cruise last summer. If you missed the episode where I talked about like my cruise experience and what I thought about the whole thing, I will link it in the show notes in case you want to go back and listen to that. Like, teleport yourself to a summer state of mind if you're feeling cold right now. Like, you mean to tell me the setting for this novel is a nostalgia-filled boy band cruise? I have so many things that I immediately want to know about this book. I also love the cover of it. Like, it has really subtle tones of red, white, and blue, the American flag, but it's done in such a cool, graphic, but like, I don't know, just very eye-catching way. I mean, they say not to judge a book by its cover, but like, this is an amazing cover. So I absolutely cannot wait to read this. I also still have never been to Books Are Magic in Brooklyn, which is Emma's store. Maybe I need to do like a whole YouTube video where I explore bookstores in New York City. Editing, Austin, write that down as a future video idea. Okay, next up is Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune. This is coming out on May 5th. And I think Carly Fortune is maybe like my favorite writer right now. Any book that she writes, I read. No questions asked. I have read all 4 of her books so far. I am personally so excited that Every Summer After is going to be adapted, I think, for a series, right? If I'm remembering correctly, for Netflix this year. And I love that these always come out in May. It's perfectly positioned to be your go to summer beach read. And I just love that it's never like a surface level romance. The characters are complex, they make mistakes, it's very relatable. So, the one sentence pitch for this is when Frankie's wedding implodes the morning after her best friend George reappears, the lifelong friends embark on her would be honeymoon together, forcing them to confront buried secrets, unresolved feelings, and whether their bond was ever just friendship at all. It's giving like what if Ross had gotten on the plane with Rachel after his wedding to Emily got disrupted because he said Rachel's name at the altar instead of Emily's. If any of you guys are Friends fans, I'm excited for this one because it's different from other setups that I've seen from Carly before. I mean, we've seen Friends to Lovers from her before, but I just think that there's a lot more weight to this given like the canceled wedding, their like really long and enduring friendship. It just feels like there's going to be a lot more at stake. And whenever you can heighten the stakes as a writer, obviously, it makes the reader more invested. So I am super excited for this. Carly is another author whose covers like always hit right. I just love that they all look like watercolor paintings and they're also gorgeous in their own way. Okay, and then the last new 2026 release I have for you comes out May 12th. I didn't really see too many for like the second half of the year, but I assume they'll continue to be announced and revealed to us in time. But this one is called Reality Bites by Amy Mass. This is actually going to be Amy's first novel. So, the one sentence pitch for this is a wickedly funny debut rom com in which a young scientist reluctantly becomes a contestant on a reality TV dating show to save her lab and realizes her secrets are threatened when romance unexpectedly finds her behind the scenes. Also, as a side note, if any of you guys watched The Wrong Paris on Netflix, I much to Andrew's dismay, picked it to watch for my movie pick one night, and it's starring Miranda Cosgrove. If you like any reality TV shows, you know, like Bachelor, Love Island, Love is Blind, all of that, just it is such like you're laughing the whole time and you're smiling because you're just like, this is so predictable, but it's also just so charming, and you're just you know, at the same time that you're cringing, you're like, but go get her, tell her how you feel. Like, I just that's a place that I like to live in is being cringy and being happy about it. More of that in 2026. But if you guys know me, you know any reality TV tie-in to a book is going to do it for me every time. So I'm super excited to check this one out when it comes out. If there are other new releases coming out this year that I missed, feel free to leave a comment if you're watching this episode on YouTube, or you can also leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify and let us know what you're looking forward to that's coming out in 2026. Okay, and then to backtrack a little bit, some books that I've recently added to my TBR, like towards the end of 2025. One is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and my motivation behind this is obviously that the Netflix adaptation comes out, I believe, this week as this episode drops. This one is, once again, a friends to lovers romance about longtime best friends Poppy and Alex who take yearly summer trips and confront their deep-seated feelings when one last vacation forces them to reevaluate their relationship. So I think I have this queued up as my next Emily Henry read. The first Emily Henry book I read was Book Lovers, which I absolutely loved, like 5 stars from me. And then I read Funny Story, I think last year. I enjoyed that one, but not as much as Book Lovers. So let me know if this should be next in my queue. Everyone also seems to love Happy Place. I feel like that is the other most talked about one from her that I see. Okay, another one that got added to my TBR from an author that I've heard nothing but good things about is Everyone is Lying to You by Joe Piazza. This is a twisty thriller about a magazine writer who reconnects with her college best friend turned Instagram influencer, only to be pulled into a deadly mystery when the influencer vanishes and her husband is found murdered. I've heard this has like some trad wife undertones to it, which, you know, take that or leave that, but any magazine and influencer intersection in a novel, given that I started out in magazines and that now I do the influencer thing, is something that I'm going to want to pick up for sure. And luckily for me, my mom bought and read this one already, so she has lent me her copy. It is literally on my bookshelf, so I will be reading it this year. Okay, next up is Park Avenue by Renee Adi. I hope I'm saying her last name correctly. This is a novel about an ambitious Korean American lawyer, Jia Song, who takes on a high profile case for a wealthy Korean American family, embroiled in bitter divorce and accusations of money laundering, all while navigating family drama, romance, and her own past. I've heard this described as Succession meets Crazy Rich Asians, but with Korean skincare at the core of like the family business and what brought them all of their millions. I mean, New York, beauty, family drama. Just yes, yes, yes. Checks all across the board. Okay, next up is Workhorse by Caroline Palmer. I have already seen tons of my former magazine editor friends reading and posting about this book. So this is her debut, and it's about an ambitious editorial assistant, Chloe Harmon, navigating the cutthroat world of a prestigious New York City fashion magazine in the early 2000s, where she schemes to rise above her middle-class family background by emulating and infiltrating the lives of wealthy, well-connected show horses around her, exploring themes of ambition, class, and the sacrifices women make for success. I do love a book about magazines, obviously. I feel like the last one that I read that actually took place at a magazine office was 100 Other Girls by Aman Harari Kia. And that one, the writing and the tone was a little too like Gen Z slang for me personally, but I still enjoyed like revisiting that world. So once again, my mom bought and read this and lent me her copy, which is amazing. So I have this one ready to read for later this year. Another recent add to my TBR is The Art of Vanishing by Morgan Pager. So, this is her debut. It is kind of like a magical realism novel about a museum employee, Claire, who discovers she can step into a Henri Matisse painting and enter the world of its subject, Jean. I'm trying to like say it with a French accent in my head, but I know I'm going to butcher it if I say it for real. Jean, leading to an impossible love story that explores themes of art, time, and connection. I love reading like a time travel-y or art museum centric book in the fall months for sure. So I feel like that's going to be a library borrow from me sometime in September or October, but I'm super excited about it and I've heard good things so far. Okay, another book that I really wanted to pick up that Andrew also got me for Christmas. Hot tip, guys, marry someone who buys you books for holidays. I mean, is there any better gift? This one's called All the Cool Girls Get Fired by Laura Brown and Christina O'Neill. So these are both former magazine editors, and this is a practical and humorous nonfiction book for professionals navigating job loss, framing it as a rite of passage and an opportunity for reinvention. The book offers a roadmap for career recovery, combining personal anecdotes, interviews with successful women, and actionable advice on coping, networking, and bouncing back stronger. Now, this is a book I wish I had in like 2017, 2018, when I got not fired, but laid off from both Nylon and Interview, since both print magazines were closing and I lost my job at both. However, I feel like reading this now might be like very healing for me because I feel like there's actually still kind of a lot of trauma from getting laid off from two quote unquote dream jobs for me personally so early on in my career, like being 23 and 24 at the time and just being so emotionally devastated that like the career that I spent all of my summers interning for in college and my whole life thinking that I would do was not working out for me, even though I went to a great college and did all these internships and made all the connections I needed to and got an entry level job right after graduating. Like, it was extremely discouraging and disappointing. And while I'm so grateful to have forged my own path and be following my deep desire to build something myself and my entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of ways, I still wanted to read this even today because I feel like maybe it will, heal the part of myself from my early 20s that had so much hope for working in magazines and was so ultimately disappointed by the reality of how things ended. And I'm just curious to read from other magazine editors who have gone through similar things. So this one is definitely on the list for this year. And I like throwing in, like a nonfiction or a memoir from time to time as well. Okay, another one is One Star Romance by Laura Hankin. This was recommended by Becca Freeman on the Bad on Paper podcast. She co-hosts it with Olivia, who I spoke about earlier in this episode. And the plot for this one is Natalie and Rob couldn't have less in common. Nat's a messy artist and Rob's a rigid academic. The only thing they share is their devotion to their respective best friends who just got engaged. However, she ends up learning that he gave her book a 1-star review and is forced to walk down the aisle with him. In romance, I personally am more here for the enemies to lovers plotline. I think it's a lot more interesting and makes for a lot more fun one-liners and kind of, sparky dialogue throughout the book. So I'm super curious to read this one, and I love the setup of it. I love, like, he's an academic, she's an artist, and here's a book that she wrote that he just gave 1 star to, and it's like, why? For what reason? Actually, on the note of star rankings, you guys, if you enjoy the podcast and you have 1 second right now, like assuming you're not driving or wrangling a toddler or doing something else as you're listening to this, would you mind pausing real quick and giving the podcast 5 stars on Spotify and Apple if you're enjoying it? I did get a 1-star review on Apple with like no context. There was no review left or anything, and it's actually really bumming me out, sorry to say. So if you really enjoy the podcast and you don't mind pausing and rating it 5 stars to show your support, that really, really does help the show, and it definitely boosts my mood. So thank you for listening. And my last recent addition to the TBR is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Are you shocked that there's a book by a man on here? Because I kind of am. But we actually chose this as our January book club pick. I'm currently waiting for my copy to be ready from the library, so haven't gotten into this one yet. Also, I heard that there is a film about this one on Netflix that came out last year. This year? No, last year, 2025. This one is a mystery novel about 4 friends in a peaceful retirement village who meet weekly to discuss unsolved cold cases, but find themselves investigating a real-life murder when a local developer is found dead. To me, this is giving Charles and Oliver from Only Murders in the Building vibes, so I'm super excited to read this one. I've heard great things. Okay, and then the last section of this episode was books still on my TBR from 2025. So I'm going to do this one a little bit more rapid fire because I have spoken about all of these on the podcast already. So to avoid repeating myself too much, I'll just give you the very quick overview. So one is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Another man, actually, kind of surprising, but I've heard great things about this one. My mom and Andrew have both read it and really liked it, and the movie for it comes out this year. So in theory, I would like to read it before that happens so I could go, see the movie. Ryland Grace wakes up alone on a spaceship millions of miles from Earth with no memory of his mission, only to discover he must save humanity from extinction. If you're looking for an intense read to start your year, pick up that one. Another one is The 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand. Probably will save this for summary times just because that's what most of Ellen's books are to me. And the plot for that one is after losing her husband, food blogger Hollis Shaw hosts a getaway with friends from different stages of her life, uncovering unexpected truths and tensions. I do still want to read The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. The plot for that is Lauren discovers her attic mysteriously produces new husbands each time she changes a light bulb, forcing her to question her path and choices. If any of you have been obsessed with heated rivalry lately, maybe you'll also be interested in this one. It's called Spiral, parentheses, Off the Ice, by Bal Cabra. This one is a rising hockey star and an aspiring ballerina agree to fake date to boost their careers, but their partnership reveals deeper personal struggles. I just told you guys I'm currently reading How to Sell a Romance by Alexa Martin. A kindergarten teacher joins a suspicious MLM and falls for an investigative reporter who wants to expose the company. We'll probably fill you in on that one on next week's Create and Consume segment once I finish. And another one still on my TBR is Be Ready When the Luck Happens by Ina Garten. This is the Barefoot Contessa's memoir. And I think I want to listen to this one on audiobook. I'm 99% sure she narrates it, and I loved the experience of listening to Kelly Bishop's memoir, The Third Gilmore Girl, on audiobook, and it's included in my Spotify. I'm not a big audiobook consumer normally. The Third Gilmore Girl is actually the first audiobook I've ever listen to all the way through. So with whatever hours you're given each month with a Spotify premium subscription, I think 1 audiobook a month is included pretty much. depending on the hours and the pacing and all of that. But I really do want to listen to this one. I've heard great things about it. I grew up, watching The Barefoot Contessa. My mom owns like all of her cookbooks. And who wouldn't want to learn how to, have a happy life where you cook and you have your Hamptons house and you're married to someone who's obsessed with you? I think there's definitely some things I could learn from her. So that is on the list as well. And to wrap up this episode, two new genres I want to kind of maybe mix in this year, at least try like one book ideally from each. Romantasy, question mark. So I obviously like romance, as you know from listening to this episode. I haven't really read much in the fantasy realm though, outside of like, Harry Potter and Twilight, which were over 10 years ago at least. No, I've heard things about ACOTAR, I've heard things about Fourth Wing. I know those are series that, if you read one, you're probably going to want to read the rest. Are there other standalone options for me where there are fantasy elements, but it's not totally unbelievable? Like if the girl's in love with a dragon, I'm kind of lost on that, if you know what I mean. And then another genre I was thinking about was historical fiction. I read The Ministry of Time last year, and I enjoyed the kind of inter-timeline elements of that book. And I also read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I didn't really think of as historical fiction at first, but it did take place in the 80s. And this is crazy to say, but that was like 45 years ago at this point, which doesn't sound right in my head. I'm like, the 80s, that was kind of recent, all things considered. But it really wasn't. So I guess that is somewhat historical in a sense. Anyway, if you have any recs for romantasy or historical fiction based on the books that I just told you I'm going to be reading this year and what my interests are, I would be highly appreciative. Keep me posted on your reading goals for this year. Also, feel free to add me on Goodreads. It's just my name, Austen Tosone, and I will see you all in next week's episode.